Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. We're gathered to reflect on a mystery so profound it altered the course of human history, the Incarnation. It is more than a religious doctrine or theological term. The Incarnation, God becoming man, is a divine strategy packed with wisdom for how we are to live, lead, and fulfill our purpose on earth. This wasn't just heaven touching earth, it was heaven entering earth. Divinity put on humanity, and in that single act we were shown the ultimate template for living. Let's unpack the life lessons embedded in the Incarnation truths that can transform how we see ourselves, our purpose, and our potential. Before anything appears, it is conceived. Before anything is built, it is designed. Before anything is born, it is purposed. That is the principle we see so clearly in the Incarnation, the truth that purpose always comes before manifestation. When we look at the life of Christ, we often begin with the miracle of the virgin birth, the angelic announcement, or the manger in Bethlehem. But we must understand that none of those events were spontaneous. Heaven doesn't operate on impulse. There was an eternal purpose that predates the physical appearance of Christ. He came because there was a problem to solve. He appeared because there was an assignment that required his presence. His coming was not reactionary, it was intentional. In the same way, you and I did not arrive on earth randomly. You are not the result of biological accident or parental chance. You are not a mistake, even if your environment or your history tried to convince you otherwise. You were born because something in this generation requires your presence. Your manifestation on earth is evidence that your purpose was already established in heaven. We must learn to think like the Creator. God never makes something without first finishing it. The end is always settled before the beginning. That is why Christ is called the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world. The plan of redemption was already in place long before the first human ever sinned. That's divine order. Finish it in the spirit before you begin it in the natural. That's why purpose is the reason for your presence, not the result of your existence. So many people wander through life searching for significance. They spend years trying to discover why they're here, moving from one job to another, one relationship to another, one place to another, hoping something will finally give them meaning. But significance is not something you stumble upon. It's something you awaken to when you understand that your life was sent here with intention. You were not born to find your purpose, you were born because of it. Now consider the strategy of the Incarnation. The world was in crisis, broken, confused, lost. Humanity had lost its direction, its identity, and its original position. And in the fullness of time, the Word became flesh. Notice that it wasn't in any time, it was in the fullness of time. That means there was a precise moment determined for his entrance. He didn't come early. He didn't come late. He came when everything was aligned with the purpose for which he was sent. Heaven does not operate on your emotional schedule. Heaven operates on purpose, and when your life begins to align with divine timing, doors open, favor flows, and manifestation occurs. Not because you forced it, but because it was time. Let that truth settle deep in your spirit. If you feel like things haven't happened yet, it may not be a sign that you're failing. It may simply be that the fullness of time hasn't arrived. You must trust that purpose is pregnant with timing. If Christ waited for the exact moment, then so must you. Delay is not denial, it's preparation for manifestation. One of the most powerful things the Incarnation teaches us is that potential must be managed. Think about this. The Creator of the universe came into the world as a baby, full of divine potential, yet wrapped in weakness. He had to grow into his assignment. Purpose does not exempt you from process. Too many people want to skip preparation and go straight to platform. But the platform is dangerous if your character hasn't been formed, your mindset hasn't matured, and your identity hasn't been anchored. The womb of time is where your purpose develops the strength to stand under pressure. Christ knew exactly why he was here. "For this cause I was born," he said, "and for this cause I came into the world." He didn't guess, didn't experiment, and didn't copy others. He walked with clarity. Purpose brings focus. Purpose reduces distraction. When you know what you're here to do, you stop wasting energy trying to do what others are doing. You stop competing with people who aren't even called to your assignment. You stop chasing applause and start pursuing destiny. That is why discovering your purpose is the most important thing you can ever do. Because until you know why you were born, you will misuse your life. Purpose gives meaning to your pain, direction to your journey, and context to your struggle. It's what gives weight to your victories and wisdom to your decisions. You may be talented, gifted, or even anointed, but if you lack purpose, you will live beneath your potential. The Incarnation reminds us that when heaven sends someone into the earth, it is never without reason. If Christ had a reason, so do you. If he had an assignment, so do you. And if his coming was strategic, so is yours. You are not too early. You are not too late. You were born for such a time as this. The fact that you are here is proof that something in the world needs what you carry. You are not the result of your parents who came through them, but you came from God. And he never creates without purpose. So when you walk out of this place today, don't walk casually, walk intentionally. Don't live confused, live connected. You were born with purpose. Now it's time to walk like it. The Incarnation is one of the most astonishing events in human history. It's not just that God came to earth, but how he came. If he had come with a mighty army, with angelic escorts and fire from heaven, we might have understood it. If he had descended from the sky with divine light blazing and thunder shaking the mountains, we might have expected that. But instead he came wrapped in human flesh, born to a poor young girl in a borrowed stable, laid in a manger meant for feeding animals. That scene is not just poetic, it's prophetic. It's a revelation of what true greatness looks like. You see, the Incarnation teaches us that greatness is not about status. It's not about titles, popularity, or applause. It's about how low you're willing to go to lift others. Greatness is measured not by how high you climb, but by how deep you serve. When God himself chooses humility, he redefines what power looks like. We've been taught that greatness means being above people, having authority, having recognition, having control. But the Incarnation flips the script. The one who had all authority made himself of no reputation. The one who created the universe became a servant in it, and in doing so, he introduced us to a higher dimension of leadership, servant leadership. He didn't lose his divinity. When he humbled himself, he revealed it. That's the paradox of power. When you lower yourself in love, you elevate others in truth, and in doing so, you rise with them. We live in a world that glorifies self, promotion. Everything is about image, influence, and individualism. But Jesus didn't come branding himself for fame. He came fulfilling a mission. He didn't chase platforms. Platforms were drawn to him because he carried substance. When you walk in humility, you won't have to chase doors, they will open to you. But when you carry pride, even open doors will become traps. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's recognizing that who you are and what you have is meant to serve others, not just elevate yourself. Jesus washed feet. He fed the hungry. He healed the broken. He walked with the rejected. Not because he had to prove anything, but because he knew who he was. And that's a key truth. Humility flows from identity. When you know who you are, you don't have to posture or pretend. You can serve without feeling small, because serving doesn't reduce you, it reveals you. The most secure people are the most humble. Insecurity hides behind pride. It masks itself in arrogance, control, and defensiveness. But when you're secure in your purpose and identity, you don't need to flex your power, you use it to lift others. Christ never used his authority to intimidate. He used it to liberate. And that's what true greatness does. It doesn't dominate. It liberates. Look at the progression of his life. He was born in obscurity, lived in simplicity, served in humility, and died in vulnerability. And yet through that life he accomplished the greatest victory in human history. He didn't need the palace to be king. He didn't need wealth to show value. He didn't need crowds to validate his worth. And neither do you. One of the most dangerous lies in our culture is that you have to be somebody before you can make a difference. But Jesus shows us the opposite. If you want to be great, become a servant. If you want to rise, bow low. If you want to lead, first learn to follow. You don't have to announce your greatness when your character demonstrates it. Humility speaks louder than self-promotion ever could. Too often, people confuse visibility with value. But there are people behind the scenes, unseen by crowds, who are changing lives every day. The ones who give, who pray, who build, who clean, who serve, these are the pillars of real impact. The Incarnation reminds us that the most powerful person who ever walked the earth came in the most unassuming form, and yet his influence remains unmatched. When we try to climb without character, our own pride becomes the weight that pulls us down. But when we choose humility, even the lowest place becomes a launching pad for destiny. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. That's not just spiritual poetry, that's a divine principle. Humility creates room for grace, and grace will take you where hustle never can. We must understand that humility is not a weakness, it is wisdom. It doesn't deny your strength, it directs it. It doesn't suppress your gifts, it sanctifies them. When you live humbly, you stay teachable, correctable, and usable, and those are the qualities that make you truly powerful. So, let the Incarnation remind us what greatness truly looks like. It looks like a king becoming a servant. It looks like strength, choosing restraint. It looks like divinity embracing humanity, not to impress us, but to transform us. That kind of greatness never fades, never fails, and never needs to shout. It just keeps changing the world, one act of humility at a time. One of the most overlooked but powerful truths in the Incarnation is how God chose to interact with the world. He didn't stay distant. He didn't simply send instructions from the heavens or operate through invisible means. He came in the form of a human being, fully divine, yet fully man. The Word became flesh and lived among us. That decision wasn't just about redemption, it was about strategy. He adapted, he stepped into the condition of the people he came to save, and in doing so, he demonstrated something we cannot afford to miss. If you want to change something, you have to enter it. You cannot transform what you're unwilling to touch. You cannot influence what you isolate yourself from. Christ didn't shout from the clouds, he walked the streets. He didn't remain in the realm of glory while earth suffered in silence. He put on skin and moved into the neighborhood. That was divine adaptation. It was strategic incarnation, and it's the same principle we must apply if we want to have lasting impact in our generation. Too often we think that to be effective, we have to separate ourselves completely from the world, but that's not what Jesus did. He remained holy while stepping into brokenness. He never compromised who he was, but he did adjust how he showed up. His message never changed, but his method was always tailored to the people he was reaching. He talked to fishermen about nets. He spoke to farmers about seeds. He engaged the poor with compassion and the religious with wisdom. He didn't water down the truth, but he did present it in a way people could receive it. That's adaptation, and that's wisdom. To be effective, you must be willing to leave your comfort zone. The Incarnation is a picture of the ultimate comfort zone being left behind for the sake of others. Heaven was perfect. No pain, no sin, no betrayal, no death. But Christ stepped out of that environment into a world full of rejection, injustice, and suffering because purpose demanded it. Impact is never achieved in the place of comfort. It's forged in the decision to enter someone else's world and walk beside them with love, truth, and grace. You don't have to become what people are to reach them, but you do have to understand them. That's the difference between imitation and incarnation. Jesus didn't become sinful to save sinners, but he did dine with them. He listened to them. He spoke their language. He adapted his posture without losing his position. You can be fully authentic to your calling while still being approachable and relevant to those you are called to. Adaptation is not compromise, it's strategy. It's the ability to assess the culture, the climate, and the condition of the people you're sent to, and then align your delivery to meet them where they are. Many people fail to make a difference not because they lack passion, but because they lack flexibility. They're so stuck in their method that they lose their mission. They're so committed to their way of doing things that they miss the opportunity to connect. But Christ shows us a better way. He shows us that impact requires intentional presence. When Jesus walked the earth, he didn't force people into a religious mold. He brought the kingdom to them in their everyday lives. He didn't stay in temples. He went to marketplaces, hillsides, homes, and fishing boats. His life was mobile, adaptable, responsive. He carried the kingdom in a way that made people feel seen, heard, and valued, and because of that, people followed him, not because he demanded it, but because he reached them where they were. If we're going to make a difference in our world in business, in ministry, in leadership, in family, we have to embrace the mindset of incarnation. We must stop expecting people to climb up to where we are, and instead be willing to come down to where they are. That's not lowering our standards, that's raising our impact. God didn't lose his divinity by putting on humanity, and you won't lose your values by putting on empathy, compassion, and cultural awareness. Real change happens through connection, and connection requires proximity. You can't influence people you refuse to engage. You can't inspire people you look down on, and you certainly can't help people if you refuse to understand their struggle. Adaptation is about putting love into motion. It's about stepping into someone else's shoes, seeing life from their perspective, and bringing truth to them in a language they can digest. It's time to stop expecting people to meet you on your terms. If Christ, being God, adjusted himself to reach us, how much more should we be willing to adapt in order to fulfill our assignment? If he could become like us to save us, surely we can learn to step into uncomfortable places to serve others. This is the power of the Incarnation. It doesn't just redeem. It reveals a model. It teaches us that if we truly want to change the world, we can't stand apart from it, criticizing from a distance. We must engage it, understand it, and step into it with the heart of a servant and the strategy of heaven. One of the greatest lessons we learn from the Incarnation is that where you are is never random. Your environment is tied to your assignment. Your location in life is not just a matter of chance, but of calling. Christ didn't just appear anywhere. He was sent to a specific place, born in a specific time, planted in a specific culture, and positioned among specific people. Every detail of his environment was aligned with the mission he came to fulfill. Think about it. The King of Heaven wasn't born in a palace, although he was royalty. He wasn't raised in a wealthy family, although he possessed all the resources of heaven. He didn't grow up in the capital of political or religious power, although he came to establish a kingdom. He was born in Bethlehem, a small and insignificant town. He was raised in Nazareth, a place so obscure that people said, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" Yet that was exactly where he was meant to be. This tells us something profound. Where you start does not limit where you're going. Your value is not determined by your zip code, your family name, or the level of attention you get. What matters most is whether you are in the place that aligns with your purpose. Sometimes God will place you in a hidden place to protect your preparation. Sometimes He'll put you in an environment that doesn't match your potential, not to punish you, but to process you. Too many people spend their lives trying to escape their current environment, thinking that the power is in relocation. But elevation doesn't come from location. It comes from revelation, the revelation of your assignment. Once you understand your assignment, you begin to see your environment not as a trap, but as training. You stop asking, "Why am I here?" and start asking, "What am I here to do?" Because when you know your assignment, even a stable can become a stage for the glory of God. Christ grew up in obscurity for 30 years before he stepped into public ministry, and even during those silent years, he was in the right place. He was being prepared. He was being shaped. He was developing character, wisdom, and obedience. He wasn't waiting, he was growing. That's the danger of being obsessed with visibility. You can miss the value of the environment you're in because you're so anxious to get somewhere else. But God doesn't waste environment. Every season, every place, every position has purpose when you're aligned with your assignment. The Incarnation also teaches us that your environment will often look opposite of your destiny. Jesus came to rule, yet he was born in poverty. He came to save, yet he entered a world full of rejection. He came to bring peace, yet he faced hostility. That's how you know you're walking in divine purpose, when your surroundings contradict your promise, but your spirit remains focused. Faith doesn't need favorable conditions to flourish, it just needs clarity of calling. Your environment might be difficult, it might be dry, it might even be uncomfortable, but if it's part of your assignment, it's necessary. Sometimes God will keep you in a challenging place because it's shaping your voice, building your endurance, and positioning you to reach people no one else can. Stop cursing the place God has called you to grow in. You don't get to pick your soil, your assignment does. And your responsibility is to be faithful where you're planted until He moves you. You are not misplaced. You are not forgotten. You are not stuck. You are stationed. Heaven does nothing by accident. Your assignment placed you in your family, your city, your job, your community, not for survival, but for significance. The same way Christ was sent into a physical location to fulfill his mission, you've been sent where you are for a purpose greater than your comfort. Don't despise your environment when it's the very thing that's activating your assignment. Jesus never tried to leave his environment to find success. He brought the kingdom into his environment. That's the model. You don't have to run to another city, chase a new crowd, or change your surroundings to walk in power. You just have to be obedient in the place where you've been sent. Influence doesn't always begin in famous places. It begins in faithful ones. When you're faithful in Nazareth, you'll be ready for Jerusalem. When you're faithful in the manger, you'll be trusted with the mission. God positions you with precision. He knows the neighborhood you live in. He knows the office you work in. He knows the family you were born into. None of it is random. Your environment has been tailored to prepare you, test you, and ultimately release you into greater impact. And even when the place you're in feels too small, too obscure, or too rough, remember, that's where Jesus started too. So don't rush the process. Don't try to escape the environment. Embrace it, study it, serve in it, learn from it. And when the time is right, your assignment will carry you into new places, new stages, and new levels, not because you pushed your way in, but because you were faithful where you were sent. There is a quiet but powerful truth hidden in the Incarnation that challenges the mindset of an entire generation. It is the revelation that purpose must always come before pleasure. Jesus, the Son of God, didn't come to earth for comfort. He didn't leave heaven to be celebrated. He came with a mission, and that mission governed every step of his life. From the moment he entered the world in a manger to the day he walked to the cross, his focus was unwavering. His choices were not driven by what was easy or enjoyable. They were governed by what was necessary. When God became man, he didn't choose the path of comfort. He chose the road of obedience, and that road led him through hunger, rejection, misunderstanding, betrayal, and even death. Yet through it all, he never turned aside. Why? Because purpose anchored him. When you know why you were born, you can endure what others run from. When purpose is clear, pain doesn't stop you, it strengthens you. The Incarnation shows us that your calling will often ask you to delay gratification, resist temptation, and endure hardship because the assignment is greater than the appetite. We live in a culture that glorifies instant gratification. Everything is built around how fast it feels good, how quickly it benefits you, how conveniently it fits your desires. But purpose doesn't operate on the schedule of pleasure. Purpose demands discipline. Purpose requires sacrifice. Purpose stretches your comfort to expand your capacity. The reason Jesus didn't fall into the traps of temptation was not because he lacked emotion, it was because he had clarity. When the devil offered him food in the wilderness, power over kingdoms, or the applause of men, he didn't respond with feelings, he responded with truth. He knew who he was, and he knew why he came. When you don't know your purpose, pleasure will lead your decisions. You'll chase things that feel good, but cost you your destiny. But when purpose is first, you learn to say no to things that distract you, even if they promise a temporary reward. The Incarnation teaches us that the joy of purpose outweighs the thrill of pleasure. Jesus endured the cross for the joy set before him, not the joy of the moment, but the joy of fulfillment. He could have avoided the pain. He could have chosen another way, but he chose the narrow path, the lonely road, the difficult journey because he saw beyond it. He saw you. He saw the redemption of humanity. He saw the eternal impact. And he made his decisions not based on comfort, but on calling. That's what purpose does. It gives you vision that sees past the moment. It gives you strength to endure what would break others. It gives you clarity in the middle of confusion. Pleasure is not wrong. It's not evil to enjoy life, but when pleasure becomes your compass, you lose your way. You begin to avoid anything that costs you, and that's dangerous because real impact always costs. Real leadership costs. Real love costs. Real obedience costs. The cross was not comfortable, but it was purposeful. And if the Son of God chose pain to fulfill his mission, how can we expect to fulfill ours without a price? Your greatest breakthroughs will come when you stop asking, "Does this feel good?" and start asking, "Is this aligned with my assignment?" The pleasures of this world fade. The applause of people fades. But the reward of purpose lasts forever. The Incarnation proves that even God did not prioritize comfort over calling. So why should we? There are seasons where purpose will demand you stay when you want to leave. It will ask you to be silent when you want to speak. It will lead you to serve when you want to be served. It will stretch your time, your energy, your emotions, not because it's cruel, but because it's cultivating something eternal. Purpose doesn't bend to your emotions, it invites your emotions to submit to your identity. And when you accept that, you begin to live on a higher frequency. You begin to walk with intentionality. You stop wasting time on things that do not build the life you were created to live. Jesus did not chase pleasure, but he did carry peace, because peace doesn't come from what surrounds you. It comes from knowing why you're here. The manger was not glamorous. The cross was not beautiful. But the purpose behind them brought heaven to earth. And that's what we must remember. Pleasure fades, but purpose fulfills. You were not born just to be comfortable. You were born to make a difference. You were born to fulfill an assignment that echoes in eternity. And just like Jesus, your decisions must reflect that. Your discipline, your relationships, your habits, they must be shaped by purpose, not pleasure. When purpose comes first, everything else falls into place. Even in the hard times, you have peace. Even in rejection, you have resolve, because you know you are not living for the moment, you are living for the mission. That is the model Christ gave us, not one of easy paths, but of eternal impact, not one of shallow comfort, but of sacrificial love. And it all began with the choice to let purpose lead. The Incarnation teaches us many powerful truths, but one of the most quietly profound is this: glory does not always arrive with spectacle. Sometimes it comes wrapped in simplicity. When God chose to enter the world, he didn't come riding on clouds or surrounded by heavenly armies. He came as a child, vulnerable, unnoticed, laid in a feeding trough. The King of Glory entered the world not through grandeur but through humility. That's the mystery and the lesson. We are trained to look for greatness in obvious places. We expect glory to look like success, fame, wealth, or status. But when God moves, he often moves in ways that defy human logic. He chooses the low places to reveal high purposes. He chooses the hidden places to birth transformation. The birth of Jesus was not a public event with royal celebration. It was a quiet moment that only heaven fully recognized, and yet in that simplicity, the fullness of God was revealed. This is what makes the Incarnation so powerful. It breaks the illusion that you have to be seen to be significant. It destroys the lie that the beginning of a thing has to be big to be divine. God entered time in a way that the world could overlook, and many did. But those with discernment, those who were watching with spiritual eyes, saw glory wrapped in a child. They saw destiny wrapped in simplicity. They saw power hidden in what others called ordinary. This is the principle that still applies to our lives today. Too many people miss their moment because they're looking for fireworks. They're waiting for the grand gesture, the big break, the loud voice. But God often whispers purpose into quiet places. He reveals himself in ordinary moments. He calls you in ways that don't feel impressive because he's not trying to impress you. He's trying to form you. Never forget that the manger was not a mistake, it was a message. God was showing us that true power is not found in external presentation, but in internal identity. What made that baby different wasn't where he was born, it was who he was. His glory was not diminished by the simplicity of his arrival. In fact, the simplicity made the glory more pure. It's easy to be impressed by people who shine in the spotlight. But God honors those who carry light even in obscurity. If God chose a manger over a palace, why do we feel like our greatness is tied to glamour? Why do we think that our calling has to come with applause, or that our ministry has to be big to be valuable? If the Savior of the world could start in a stable, then surely we can embrace the places that feel small, simple, or slow. Because what matters most is not how something looks, but what God has placed inside it. There is glory in small beginnings. There is beauty in the unseen seasons. There is purpose in the ordinary days. Your significance is not defined by your platform, it's defined by your obedience. Jesus didn't come with an entourage. He didn't need a crowd to confirm his calling, and neither do you. When heaven has marked you, You don't need human validation to walk in your assignment. Sometimes the most anointed things look the most average on the surface. Sometimes the most powerful people are the ones no one is paying attention to. But God sees, and God chooses, and when He chooses something simple to carry something sacred, that's not a downgrade, that's divine strategy. He does it so no one can boast. He does it so the vessel never gets confused about where the power comes from. There is a kind of glory that doesn't need to shine in gold because it radiates from within. It's the glory of obedience, the glory of humility, the glory of purpose. That's what Jesus carried, and that's what we're called to carry. So don't despise your stable. Don't reject the season that feels quiet, unnoticed, or routine. That might be the very place where God is birthing something eternal. We keep looking for mountaintops, but God often starts in valleys. We want crowns, but He begins with crosses. And we keep waiting for the doors that feel dramatic, while missing the small assignments that carry weight in heaven. But the Incarnation shifts our perspective. It tells us, look again. The miracle might not be loud. The breakthrough might not be flashy, but if it's God, it's glorious even if it's hidden. Jesus lived 30 years in quiet development before 3 years of public ministry. He spent most of his life in simplicity working with his hands, living among common people, walking streets no one documented, but every moment counted. Every day prepared him. Every hidden hour was holy. And when his time came, he was ready not because of fame, but because of formation. So embrace the hidden seasons. Trust the simple places. Don't be afraid to walk through doors that don't look impressive. God is not limited by appearances. He specializes in taking what looks like nothing and making it into something eternal. That's the lesson of the Incarnation. Glory doesn't always shine at first. Sometimes it cries in a manger. Sometimes it works in silence, but it's real, and it's powerful, and it's enough. The Incarnation was not just a divine event, it was a divine example. It was God stepping into human skin to teach us how to live, how to lead, and how to love. Through his life, we see that identity comes before activity, that faithfulness is greater than fame, that true strength is found in submission, and that your environment is shaped by your assignment. We learn that purpose must guide our decisions, not pleasure, and that the greatest glories are often hidden in the simplest places. The Incarnation reminds us that heaven never does anything casually. Everything about Jesus' arrival was intentional: the timing, the place, the conditions, the people. Nothing was random, and that same intentionality rests on your life. You are not an accident. You were sent. You were placed. You were designed with a purpose too important to waste on distractions or comfort. So live like Jesus lived. Walk with conviction. Embrace the hidden seasons. Honor your current environment. Sacrifice what's easy for what's eternal. Let purpose lead even when it costs you something. And remember, the same glory that was wrapped in the manger is now wrapped in your calling. The world may not recognize it yet, but heaven does. The greatest impact you will ever make will not come from chasing status. It will come from walking in divine purpose with courage, humility, and obedience. The Word became flesh, so we could become the reflection of that Word. Now go and live in a way that proves He still dwells among us, not just through what you say, but through how you live. Let the Incarnation not just inspire you, let it transform you, because God didn't just come to visit earth. He came to awaken heaven in you.